as we're looking at the units, we want to actually take care of the low-hanging fruit first. So from an interior standpoint, if there's a unit that we can go in and spend, $5,000 that the previous owner maybe didn't have the money to go in and renovate or didn't want to spend that money because they just wanted to transition out of the property, we want to attack those first.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Man, the construction process can seem so daunting, right? You need somebody with the expertise to make that happen. There are so many things to think through, when doing this value add process well. All right. And our guest today is going to help you to think through those priorities. What is the top priority when we have so many units to turn over? We're dealing with so many tenants. We need to get those units filled as fast as possible. Man, what do we do? How do we think through that? How are we finding materials right now? How do we find labor? All that today with our guest, Oliver Fernandez. He's a construction business owner and real estate investor that has successfully completed over $80 million worth of construction projects and accumulated a real estate investment portfolio valued over $150 million in the past 9 years. He's going to teach you a lot today about, so many great things, but the construction process and what's most important. Oliver, welcome to the show. Honored to have you on. And, your expertise is something that we almost all need some of, or somebody on the team, right? That has your level of expertise. It's so crucial. We wouldn't have any of these apartments if it wasn't for people that were building them, right? Or homes of any kind. So Oliver, tell the listeners a little bit about who you are, maybe where you're located, and let's dive into your superpower, in the syndication business.
Yeah, Whitney, super excited to be here with you. So my name is Oliver Fernandez. I live in Washington, D.C. And that's actually where I first started buying, row homes here in D.C. and converting them into 2 and 4 unit property or apartment buildings. And we were doing really well with that. We did it over, we bought one, then we bought the neighboring property, and then we bought the neighboring property. So we were starting to buy quite a few of them. And we were looking to make a bigger investment into something where we could do 16 to 20 plus units. And that's why I came across the podcast. And that's why I love doing these podcasts, because they really do inspire people to think a different way or take a different action. And that podcast is talking about people buying apartment buildings that were already renovated or already in place, that were already renting. And then all you would do is you'd go in there and do a renovation and increase the value. And that really intrigued me. And that's what brings me here today. Now we're buying those same value add type apartments. We go in, we do the construction on those projects, we renovate the kitchens. Sometimes we'll even, do waterproofing, update down units, and bring them online to really create a tremendous amount of value for our investors and then the team as a whole. Nice. Well, let's walk through some of the construction stuff a little bit. We've all heard that the value add terminology, forever, right? And I'm almost aware, some of us almost ignore that, I think, right? That term, we hear so much, but it's so true, right? It's been such an important part of adding value to these apartment communities that most of us have been buying and building that value for our investors and ourselves, right? But let's walk through that a little bit. You buy a project or the team buys an apartment community. Let's talk about assessing the value add component or the construction component and walk through maybe expectations of how many units we can do per month, or how do you think about that? And maybe you can even give us an example deal, recent opportunity, and let's talk through that a little bit. Yeah, that's a great question. So let's dig into it. What we'll do is on these properties is we like to do the outside first. And we like to basically harden the outside, because if you start on the inside and the roof's leaking, or you are updating interiors, but you got boarded up buildings everywhere, the people that come to see your unit or your apartments are going to be turned off a little bit. So we always like to update from the outside in. And a perfect example of that is we bought a 152 unit property in Atlanta, Georgia. And it had some burned buildings. So they were all boarded up. And it also had some roofy leaks. So even if we had gone inside to the units and updated the units, they would have got destroyed from all the roofs leaking, right? And it also had, some water issues that were coming in through the foundation. So what we did is we started on the outside. We updated all of the roofs so that we could do our quick interior turns and start generating some additional cash from now being able to rent those apartments out. And then after we got all the roofs done, we went and and started updating that burn property. And we updated the burn property by like putting in new windows and like getting it looking presentable from the outside so that when families came in there, it wasn't like, oh, well, what about that abandoned building that's right in the middle of the property? But where we created a lot of value on that property was there was a lot of water infiltration coming in through the basement. And, this property had actually been under contract like 3 or 4 times prior to us getting it under contract and then eventually buying it. And the reason why a lot of those other parties had backed away is because of the water infiltration in the basement. And they got freaked out by it because obviously when water gets in the basement, you got mold, you got all these other issues that start to present themselves. And this is why I was so involved in the nitty gritty of the duplex and the triplex and the quads here in DC. We had a tenant move in one of those duplexes. And the day the tenant moved in, I got a call and they told me that there was water in the basement. And I was like so bummed out about it. And it was like, man, we did everything right, but like we made a mistake. Our waterproofing didn't hold the water back like we thought it did. But those exact same lessons that I learned on that duplex, we then now applied to this 152 unit property where the returns could be even more great than would have been at this duplex property. So I used that pain on that duplex property to really drive a ton of value for our investors on that 152 unit property. So yeah, we started on the outside, we moved to the inside, and that's how we look at the construction for these deals.
Yeah, I think it's smart. It's the curb appeal too, right? New ownership, and you're hitting that. You're kind of getting that pop right away. Whether it's repainting the exteriors or whatever it may be, and it's like people drive by, it's obvious something happening at this property, right? I think it almost gives hope to the current tenants as well. Right. As they pull in, it just looks nicer, even if their unit hasn't been updated yet. It just does something mentally, right? They can see things are happening, and sometimes some don't want it, but most do, I think, by far. Well, okay. Speak to some of the next steps. It sounds like, okay, first, it's like highest priority first, right? Obviously, if we have leaks, man, we got to get those fixed. No doubt about it before we update the interior, because there's so many other problems that can come from that. But okay, leaks are fixed, highest priority things first, exterior to interior. What's next? How do you assess them? Maybe which units to tackle first and maybe create that plan of turning these units over?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as we're looking at the units, we want to actually take care of the low-hanging fruit first. So from an interior standpoint, if there's a unit that we can go in and spend, $5,000 that the previous owner maybe didn't have the money to go in and renovate or didn't want to spend that money because they just wanted to transition out of the property, we want to attack those first. So we'll go in, we'll spend, $5,000, but then be able to, now all of a sudden bring a $1,000 per month unit online, oftentimes even $100 more than what it was previously being rented for or is currently being rented for at the property. So we'll spend that, $5,000 to make $1,000, a month. So we get a direct impact immediately when we do that. So we'll take care of the low hanging fruit, the units that need maybe some new flooring, some paint, cleaning up the cabinets, maybe just needs to even be totally cleaned out. A lot of times when people leave these properties, they're kind of leaving in not a rush, but they leave things behind. So a lot of these things need to be deep cleaned. And when you build out a good team of cleaners and people that can do the little drywall repairs and painting, it gives a tremendous pop to a place and allows people to be proud of the place that they're living in. So we'll go in, we'll do all the low hanging fruit, and then we'll start moving to the more difficult projects on site. So we typically like to average right around 6 to 10 units a month. And, now is a little different. Now we really got to plan ahead, make sure we got, appliances, all those things that are, we used to be able to call the supplier and get them the next day. Now those things are now taking, 30, 60, 90 days to even get in stock. So sometimes even longer. So that's how we try to plan our construction is take care of the low hanging fruit first, the things that we can go in and quickly get back online so we can get tenants in there quickly. And then we'll move to the more difficult projects, which oftentimes take longer to get the materials for those projects. So it works out perfectly. We finished the easy stuff. And then by the time we're done the easy stuff, we'll have our materials for that hard stuff.
Makes a ton of sense. Like the units that are going to take the least amount of time to get them back online, man, they need to be producing as fast as possible, right? We need to get some tenants in there, and you can't, and it may be as simple as, like you said, a good deep cleaning, or maybe painting, or just flooring, or, you may not have to remodel the entire thing to get that unit back online. And obviously the income determines the value of the whole property, right? So we don't need any more down units or for months at a time than we have to. It makes a ton of sense. And then you're moving on to the heavier lifts. Speak to working with tenants, or maybe how you're picking, the units to start turning that have tenants in them. Then, it sounds like, okay, outside first, the inside. And then as we go inside, we're doing low hanging fruit. That's maybe, the smaller things or just need cleaning well, or a few minor things that we can, get these units back on. You also said 6 to 10 units per month. I think that's helpful. And while we're on that note though, how many guys or gals, how many employees is it taking to turn, say, 6 to 10 units per month? What kind of staff do we need to do something like that at that scale?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really interesting point. When we're doing that, there's so many. It's almost like a phased process. It's like you go in and you do you paint one area, and then you have someone that maybe can do paint, but they're better at doing flooring. So they're kind of waiting for the person that goes ahead and paints all the units because they're really good at that. And then right behind it, they're going in and installing the flooring. So we usually have a good group of like 10 to 12 people on site to execute on that plan. That's over a 30-day time period to get that done. And that usually will produce that 6 to 8 units a month of fully turned, cleaned out, ready to rent units for our new prospective tenants.
Nice. Can you speak to also just the process of working with the tenants that then, you're going to start doing units that have tenants in them? How do you all handle that a little bit? What does that look like? I know that can be daunting, to new operators as well, or, even experienced, but give us a little insight there.
Yeah. So that's an interesting point, because the reason why I like multifamily is because it was already, generating income. So like we want our tenants that are there to stay there and continue to, produce, cash for us. So we oftentimes will just update the units where tenants are moving out, right? And then that usually keeps our focus for the first year. And then once we get that first year of, all the tenants that are moving out and, cleaning up the property, we'll start to go and, talk to the tenants and let them know, like, hey, is there anything that we could add to your apartment that you would, or your unit that you would enjoy or like maybe a light with a ceiling fan on it, or, updated appliances. And then we want the tenant to still stay there, because where we really make our money is not having to turn all those units. And I don't care if someone's been in there for a month or 10 years, you're going to have to do some patch and repair. You maybe even have to tear out the carpet. So like we want that tenant to stay there. We just want to add value to them so that they're willing to pay, a little bit more of a premium, and that we can get a return on investment. So for example, if we can put in some, do something where it's like $1,000, like change out a couple lights, but now the tenant's willing to pay an additional $100 a month in rent. Like that's over 100% return just on that small conversation, and you start doing that over 100, 200, 300 units. It's a big deal from a cash flow perspective and a value perspective for our investors.
Nice. So you're gonna talk to that tenant, and I'm sure they're going to be able to quickly tell you, well, I'd like to have this done, that done, or right. And it may be, while you have this staff there too. I was thinking, there's 10 to 12 people. Man, it's probably possible, or I know, or it is possible often, maybe not always, but to even go in and do a few of those things pretty quickly, even when they're like at work during the day, right? They come home and it's like, wow, I've got new carpet, or wow, my place is painted, or, and depending on how that's presented to them, I think often, they feel cared for to some degree, right? And you're trying to not inconvenience them. any more than you have to, obviously, because like you said, you want them to stay. So, they're the income, right? And you want it to be home for them, all those things. So you mentioned a minute ago, obviously some of the difficulty of finding appliances or materials. Speak to how you all are handling that. I know that it's a big topic right now, has been for the last couple of years, right? How are you all doing that? How are you ensuring, okay, we're going to buy this, you said 152 units, it needs some work. We know, okay, we're going to return this many units, or how are you planning for that and ensuring, okay, we have all those materials available, or hopefully we can get them? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's becoming definitely a challenge that everybody has full attention on. And what we're doing oftentimes is we're buying in advance and we're trying to buy in bulk. But it sounds cliche, but everybody's also trying to do that. So that even makes another challenge, because now everybody's trying to buy in bulk. So like the supply even becomes even more constricted. But yeah, we try to just get ahead of everything, and we're trying to plan everything out. And that's the only way we can survive now. And then we also go in and we try to do the things where we can get materials quickly. So there's still work that's being done, but it allows us to get some stuff done before we actually need some of the longer lead items. So like, for example, we'll go in and we'll do a bunch of paint. Like there's no shortage of paint right now. So we'll do a lot of exterior painting, get all that stuff. So there looks and it appears and that there's a lot of work being done and things are looking a lot better. And then that buys us time to, plan ahead and get our appliances and all of that stuff bulk ordered for our projects.
It's like having a pulse on what you can get right now, right? How are you doing that? How do you try? Is that just like, calling suppliers often? What is that? How do you know those things to say, we got plenty of paint. Let's knock out all the painting projects we can, while we're waiting on the other materials. How do you keep a pulse on what is available as far as materials?
Yeah, that's a really good question that honestly no one's really asked. It's like it's almost done like second nature. But yeah, so it's really, you got to get on the phone. Like even connecting with you, it's like you got to get out there and you got to get on the phone and start making things happen. So it's connecting with these people and seeing like, hey, do you have XYZ? And if they don't, then ask for a recommendation. Do you know anybody that would? And now it leads you to the next person. And it's like, I oftentimes relate it to like being in a ping pong ball machine. It's like you pull the thing and then you get pushed from here to there, to there, to there. And then all of a sudden you land on that one jackpot. And it's like ding, 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 ding. And then it's like, oh, they have the stuff that I need, but it's like, it's getting on the phone, it's calling. And right now it's not a situation where you're just going to make one phone call and get your result. Oftentimes it's 10, 15 phone calls to find that one thing that's going to solve everybody's problem. So it's getting out there and then training the team to do this as well. Like we train every day in our organization on communicating and getting out there and pushing through all the resistance that's out there in the world to be able to find what we need to be able to provide for the team and provide for our investors.
So are you all storing materials on site? Or if you're able to buy them in bulk, and how do you do that? Or how do you keep them so obviously they're not vandalized or stolen or that they're taken care of, while you can get them?
So we've been just trying to get so much material that we actually rented out another warehouse because we have so much stuff and we want to stay ahead of the stuff. But at the same time, and this is kind of a catch-22. It's like, you don't want to buy too much stuff where the stuff goes out of date or it doesn't, it's not in anymore. It's not in style anymore. So we actually rented out a new warehouse space as well to be able to store this stuff. And then once we need it, then we're bringing it onto the site. We'll get containers and bring them on site too. But oftentimes that, that's kind of an eyesore unless you have like a really big laydown area on site. So what we like to do is we like to just store it at our warehouse. We have more security on where we're constantly going in and we're seeing the warehouse stuff. So we got more eyes on it versus having it on site in a storage container. But we also will take it from the warehouse and then bring it to the site when we need it. So that's kind of how we've been working that angle.
Yeah, that's a neat thought. As far as containers can be an eyesore depending on where you have to place them, right? You're talking about going in first thing and fixing the outside, making it all nice, and roofs, and painting all that, and then planting a big Connex box right in the front, Yeah, I can see why that, may not be the best thought, but not everybody, has a warehouse. I know that's oftentimes the best way to store things so you can lock them and keep them dry, all that. But I love the warehouse idea. If you have mass, right? If you have enough units, you have enough buildings or process is happening as far as unit turnover where you can support something like that. What do you see as maybe the risks in the construction process right now? Is it materials? Is it labor? What are some things? Hey, if I'm fixing to buy that 150 unit building, whether it's Atlanta or wherever, what are, maybe what's going to be your biggest concern if it's going to be a heavy lift on the construction side?
No, you hit it right on the head. It's both materials and labor, and even, just finding, good qualified team members to work with or subcontractors to hire. It's the days of just making one phone call and you think someone's going to call you back is like over. It's like you got to make 10 or 15 phone calls to find one person that's even willing to even do your job, So it's really paying attention to those details, getting ahead of all of that stuff, and then once you find the good people, you keep them busy, and you're not transactional with them, like you just keep them on all of your projects and keep them moving forward. So prices are going up. I mean, like even from a standpoint of like even labor, to find the good people, oftentimes you got to pay big money for them. And then that same person or that same company that you're subcontracting from, right, is also paying big money to keep their team members. So there's a lot of like little nuanced challenges that are out there, but at the same time, there's so much opportunity out there there's all kinds of ways to make money. And that's what we try to keep our focus on in the organization, because if not, it's like a sinking ship, whereas there is so much opportunity out there. We just keep our focus forward. We've hit our goals and we continue to move toward them as well.
Give us a maybe tip or a way that you found to find some people like labor, workers as far as on the construction side. It's difficult, right? I mean, in every industry right now, how have you done that well or most recently?
So if I'm looking for painters, what I'll do is I'll call like the local Sherwin-Williams. And like, those are the people that know who the painters are that are coming in and buying material every day. I try not to go to Google, because you go to Google and like it pulls up all these businesses and you don't know who's like really working or who's like sitting on their couch all the time. But, the local Sherwin-Williams, they know who's buying paint every single day. And like, I want that guy, or I want the second guy who's buying the second most amount of paint. And I want those guys working on my job sites. And the reason why I want those guys working on my job sites is they're doing something right for them to continue to have business. Because it's hard enough to make money on this stuff the first time. And then if you have to go back and do it a second time because the person you hired doesn't really know what they're doing and they messed it up, it's even more painful. So I like to call the local supply houses. Like, I'm looking for plumbing, right? I call Ferguson, and ask Ferguson, who's buying, like, you have any plumbers that you can recommend? Who's buying a lot of material right now? Who can you connect me with? And then they'll even ask you, like, what kind of project do you have? Is it a residential? Is it a commercial? Is it, what kind of project it is? So they have a pulse on the labor as well. So I try to use as many resources as I can. I'm not saying I know everything and I know all things, but I know how to find the people that know the thing. That's been a huge help for the organization all across the board.
Yeah, they're talking to those people almost every day, right? They know where they're working, and just in small talk, I'm sure that laborer is saying, "Hey, yeah, I'm working down here to the road, whatever road it is, or what apartment community." So, no doubt, that's great advice. All right, well, switching gears just a little bit, Oliver, we'll go to a few final questions. What's the most important metrics that you track? It could be personally or professionally.
I always have written down my goals. I mean, even before I started reading books and they told you to write down your goals, I always had my goals written down. I'm not saying that I look at them as much as I do now, because I used to write them down and then kind of just put them away and then look at them maybe once a year. But now I look at them and I'm writing them down more often, because it just reinforces what's important for me, what's important. And then it helps me stay focused on that when all the other distractions come in. But from a KPI standpoint, what am I looking at the most? We look at activity. So we're tracking activity a lot. And what do we mean by activity? It's like we're tracking phone calls for prospecting. And the reason why we're tracking activity is because there's always a ratio. And the biggest, the thing that most people and that I failed at so much in the beginning is I always would like underestimate how much it took to be great. And I would just do one phone call and like wait for that person and wonder if that person was going to call me back. But like once you increase the activity and keep moving forward, it's like you almost forget about all of the things that fall down because you have so much that's going on in front of you that like you're almost happy that one thing fell down. So we always are tracking activity, like whether the phone calls, how many units are being done, hours that are worked, right? And then based off of the production that was completed off of those hours. Because at the same time, we want activity, but then we want efficiency. So we get efficiency through training. You know, like if someone's working 80 hours and they've only completed one unit, like there's a disconnect. And I'm not mad at the person. I'm actually happy that I have someone that's willing to work all those hours. Now it's like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what can we streamline to make the effort that you're putting out there into the world actually produce a result much faster? So we train and we try to get more efficiency around all of our processes. But the biggest thing we're tracking is activity.
Nice. What about some daily habits that you're disciplined about that have produced the highest return for you?
Man, showing up, man. There's been so many challenges that have happened, things where it's just like all you want to do is just roll over and just say, you know what, this isn't for me, but just always showing up. And you just don't know when that opportunity is going to crack or it's going to break for you, But for me, that's always been my thing, is just showing up, just being present and showing up, not just like, oh, I'm here, but being there and having a great attitude and like make it a great day, or, just inspiring people. I try to do that even with my kids in the morning. I'm always walking in, even if like everything's burning up around me. I always walk in with a smile on my face. I'm always trying to, inspire them so that they take on that same attitude of just, hey, today's going to be a great day. It might not be a great day, but I'm going to make it a great day, like just that type of attitude. So just always having a great attitude. I mean, that's gotten me into so many places. Just having a great attitude, and people want to be around that. They want to be around people that are constantly looking at the bright side, but at the same time willing to go into the nitty gritty of things and gut it out, and make things happen when things are difficult. So
it's great advice, and we've all heard something like that, but I mean, we don't do it, or we don't create the habit. I love that, how you answered that, because whether you have a great attitude in the morning or a poor one, it's contagious. Right. Even to your kids, I love how you said, you're teaching them to have a great attitude in the mornings, right? To smile, whether, they think they're fixing to have to do something difficult or not, right? It's still a great day. And so I love that answer. What about the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Yeah. So I got to roll back to just always showing up, man, and just giving it 100%. I remember, so I walked on at Syracuse and I played football there, and I was never the biggest, I was never the fastest, I was never the strongest, but I always showed up and I always gave 100%. And I just got better and I got better and I got better. And then they brought me on the travel team. And then next thing you know, I'm playing in the games, and then I'm playing special teams. And it's just like, just constantly showing up and just constantly pushing to be the best version of yourself. And a lot of employers might give up on you. And what do I mean by that? Like, they might give up on you because you don't have all the skills. But you have to take ownership for that as a person. And that's what I've done. I've done so much work after hours that when it comes time for game time, I'm ready for the game. Right. So it's getting in the gym, just doing the work time and time again. And that's another thing I noticed at Syracuse. All of those guys that were there, that were scholarship guys, they've been working out since the third grade, every day. Since the third grade. And then you get people that say, hey, I want to go play at the next level. People have been working out since the third grade versus 11th grade. They've been grinding for so much longer. And it's just I had to take that in and take ownership for that and accept it and just say, you know what? I'm going to be one of those people. I'm going to take that same trait and I'm going to just show up every single day. I'm going to do the work. Even when it's not practice, I'm going to go to the gym and do the extra workouts. Why? Because I want to be great and I want to get my shot. That's been the thing that's helped me in business. It's helped me in real estate. It's just showing up and understanding that things are not going to be perfect. And I'm okay with it, but I'm just going to continue to get better every single day And at the end of the day, you end up producing when you do that.
Yeah, I love that. The commonality between athletes, right? And first responders or military. It's like, man, it's very difficult to accomplish those things. It's very, and you're taught so much by that. And like you talked about, man, just the day in, the day out, it's just keeping on going. That's what I heard, so many answers that you're talking. It's like, man, you got to show up. You got to show up to win, right? But you can't just show up once, right? You got to show up, every day that you lose, you're getting closer to winning. And I appreciate that so much, as an athlete, as a, military or first, like I just hear that often and man, yeah, you got to show up. How do you like to give back?
We do a lot of giving back here in DC. We've partnered with a local charity called Kid Power. And it's really close and dear to my heart because, growing up, my mom used to take me and my three sisters to the library, and she just instilled so many good lessons in us, get your work done, stay focused on where you're going. And that same program, Kid Power, does the exact same thing. They provide after school activities for the youth here in DC. So we've donated over 6 figures to that. We're excited to continue to keep pouring back into it. And honestly, it's that's what keeps inspiring me to keep pushing forward is I want to be able to donate $1 million to that. I want to have even a greater impact on that. And another organization we partner with is there's an organization here in DC that works with battered women. And we go there and we donate our time there. We make breakfast after the day after Thanksgiving there. So we're definitely in the community, and we that's what inspires me so much to just keep growing and keep expanding and continuing to just be the best version of ourselves.
Oliver, grateful to have had you on the show, and you've definitely taught us a lot about your thought process and organizing this, massive construction projects. I mean, from the construction side and laying out, how we think about the highest priority down to the lowest priority, and making those things happen, to finding materials, to finding labor, but now even to that habit, showing up every day, the great attitude. I just think that pays off so much. And is a must for almost anyone that's successful as an entrepreneur or athlete or almost in anything. So grateful to have you on and to have met you. Tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you and learn more about you.
You can reach out to me at www.investwitholiver.com. Looking forward to connecting with you and excited about what we got going on in the future.
Thank you for being a loyal listener of the show. Please subscribe and share it with your friends. We want to help you become the passive investor you've always wanted to become, but also the operator you've always wanted to become. We want to be the #1 resource for your real estate investing journey. But go to lifebridgecapital.com where you can start investing in real estate today.